So let's go over troubleshooting lunge variations. So we're gonna start off from this forward position first, go over what to look for in your own technique when you're doing any kind of lunge variation. Then we'll move to the side because both of those will give you a lot of different information. So the first thing that you wanna look for when you're looking straight on is what is happening from the foot, the knee, and the hip right here, okay? So typically what you will see are a couple different, well, first off, let's go over what's ideal. So as you're going through your lunge, whether it's a reverse lunge, walking lunge, whatever it may be, you wanna see all three of these maintain a nice straight line. A little bit of inward motion in the knee is okay, as long as that knee doesn't move over past the big toe here like this, okay? A little bit of motion in line with the big toe is okay. That's actually how your body produces a lot of force. You have to actually internally rotate the femur. That means the tibia goes, so does the midfoot here, that drives into the big toe, and that's the point of max force output. So this is the same thing that happens when you run and walk. When you strike and you roll through right as your heel comes off the ground and you have max internal rotation, or we call pronation of the foot, you have max force output into that big toe. This is why you see really good athletes a lot of times have flat feet. They've just found a way to get into that position of max force output and live there and be there all the time, okay? So getting to that position isn't a bad thing. What we wanna have is some variability. So again, as you see somebody go through, as you watch yourself go through a lunge variation, a little bit of that motion is okay. Again, as long as that knee doesn't move past the big toe here. So the second thing that you'll see is the knee being way out on the outside here, where you're living out on the outside of your foot. And you'll tend to see this in your shoe wear, where this inside part here by the big toe will have no wear, and your tread pattern will go somewhere from your heel to the outside of the foot. Not all will be worn down, but you won't ever see it go down in. This just, again, depends on the person and the way they're built and the way they tend to compensate or deal with fatigue. So again, what you want to see here are these things, three things being a straight line. The next thing you want to pay attention to is what's happening at the hips, okay? If you start to see this big hip tilt, okay, where one side is elevating quite a bit, what that tells you is that you tend to be in a bad position in the hips and you're missing some motion there. And then your way of compensating is you're hitting a bony block, but you're still descending into flexion, but you don't really have the ability to rotate. So your hips will start to elevate and you'll kind of get the side crunch on one side. And so again, you'll see one hip much lower than the other hip. And this tends to happen in the lower into the lunge position you get. You can also see this really well from behind. You'll see the hips go sideways like this instead of staying fairly stable as they should. That just tells you that there's some motion missing in the hips and you need to go back and work on your mobility a little bit and then reassess and see what's happening in the hips. Okay, so from the side position, let's go over what to see there. So ideally what you do want to see, the knee, the shoulder, the hip, the shoulder and the ear, all these in a straight line, okay? So you're in this nice upright position. Now there's some qualitative aspects to what that actually looks like. You can be in that position, but be pretty arched here and extended, and see how my hips are tucked forward. Like if my hips were a bowl of water, it would all have spilled out the front. That's something to be avoided. That's gonna be another compensation that you'll see quite often, especially if you start to run out of room. You struggle to get into that position without feeling like a deep stretch through the trailing leg here. The compensation is to tilt these guys, kind of lean forward and arch the back, or your whole torso will simply lean forward. Again, both of those are good ways to create force or to allow yourself to get into a position that you can't otherwise get into. And so again, it's just it's a sign of a compensation. So first thing you always want to try is to just note what's happening, focus on your cues and see if that can correct it. If it doesn't, then you tend to have a movement limitation that needs to be addressed through some other work, okay? So again, bottom position here, if you're too far out, that knee will travel behind your hip. If that gets too far, then you'll be forced to arch your back and extend like this. There's nothing you can do about it. So that's just a technique thing of taking too big of a step. If you're too short of a step, the knee will be in front of the hip, and same thing, you'll kind of get rounded like this, and oftentimes you'll have a hard time getting the weight onto the forward leg, and you'll have to lean forward and do something funky like that. So in an ideal world, knee straight underneath you, straight line, Ribs are dropped down towards the hips, not extended through here. You're in a straight line through your spine. And the knee here can travel over the toes as far as you'd like, as long as you don't lose contact with the heel. Again, that's gonna depend from person to person, their specific levers, but some forward knee travel is totally fine. If you try to keep this too upright, you'll have to lean forward to get enough weight into the forward leg to actually stand up where you wanna ever be able to use any load. So again, focus on this straight up and down, straight line through here, good positioning through here. If you can get that, then that allows you this knee to travel forward, and you'll feel all the muscles in this forward leg engage and do the work for you. So those are the two positions to look at when you're analyzing any lunge variation to see what's happening and see how good your technique is. And again, some changes, a little bit of variability from rep to rep is fine. Focus on what your average movement looks like, not the outliers of one rep being a little bit off. Obviously, you want to improve your quality over time to where most reps look fairly similar, but a little bit of movement or a little bit of variability from rep to rep isn't necessarily a bad thing. You're not a robot. Not everything needs to be perfect. Actually displaying a little bit of variability isn't a bad thing, but again, having that be within a normal range of a little bit of motion as opposed to finding the extremes that I went over in this video, those are the things that you want to avoid. Try to fix with your cues. If that doesn't work, that means you need a little bit more mobility work.